Do you want to be on the side of Dr. King or George Wallace? Do you want to be on the side of John Lewis or Bull Connor? Do you want to be on the side of Abraham Lincoln or Jefferson Davis? This is the moment to decide, to defend our elections, to defend our democracy. And if you do that, you will not be alone. That's because the struggle to protect voting rights has never been born by one group alone.
So that was the president in Atlanta last week talking about what side of history some people need to be on. It is Wednesday. That means Sharon's table is in full effect, and we have a feast of Black beauty, Black power, Black brilliance. Here they are. We're back together again, ladies. Ameshia Cross, Brittney Cooper, Candace, Kelley. So we heard the president talking tough in Atlanta last week. Brittney, he did create a stir. Republicans, some in his own party, immediately jumped on him. But a lot of words, no action, right? 1 year into his presidency, where do we square things?
Look, I think the reality is that if we allow no sort of protections on voting rights in a Biden administration when he has a Democratic Congress, that this will become his legacy, that his presidency will be seen as a failure. It doesn't matter that he has managed the COVID crisis better than his predecessor. It doesn't matter the kind of stimulus and economic saving that he did in early 2021. He has to secure the voting rights of his base. Black people are the base of the Democratic Party. And so he's got to figure it out. Now, here's the thing, though. I think that it's a critical misstep to only come after these Democrats. There are 52 people in the Congress, including some moderate Republicans, many of whom used to support voting rights, who also have refused to get on board here. And so I think the Democrats have to have a full court press. And I think they have to stop playing only with these disingenuous members of the Democratic Party. And they also have to go to these Republican moderates and say, which side are you on? Because this should be very basic, especially for those more centrist Republicans that rely on a kind of mixed base of people to bring them into office.
So really get tougher and make it a litmus test across the aisle too. Ameshia, we hear what Brittney's saying, but there's Manchin and Sinema and Manchin, and they have the power to stop this nonsense. And they just are very clear that they're not going to do it, even embarrassing a president, a sitting Democratic president. Sinema did by coming before the floor, really trumping him and saying what she's not going to do no matter what. So is there any chance to get this done?
In this session, absolutely not. I think that we have to be very real about what's happening here. I heard what the professor said, and I agree with her 100%. But with the calendar we currently have, with the fact that we're about to go into the midterm campaign season, with the fact that Sinema got high and mighty and decided to go live, basically stand there and give a press conference and have that conversation within an hour before the president of the United States was to give his own pitch for voting rights before the Senate, I think not only showed the fact that she honestly does not respect his office, but also that she knows what her role is and that her vote counts. And without her voice there, without her vote in support of voting rights, in support of lifting the filibuster, because remember, she said she supported voting rights. She just didn't want to lift the filibuster, which is a shot in the foot. This woman is full of it. And I think that we have to call out both parties, obviously, but we also have to have a recognition that a lot of white people do not care about Black people's voting rights and do not want to have us included in democracy. And many of those white people also have a D in front of their elected names. So let's be real about this. It's not just Manchin and Sinema who did not want the filibuster lifted. There are other very cowardly Democrats who also didn't want it lifted. Fact is, Joe Biden just did not have the numbers. And it was more than just Manchin and Sinema on the Democratic side as well.
Yeah, and I think Clyburn, the representative that we respect, alluded to that or outright stated it over the weekend that they're not the only ones. He had us it on good authority. He said that there are other Democrats who are just hiding behind them who don't want to do it either. They don't want to go on the record here. But Clyburn also said, Candace, that Black people perhaps are punishing and focusing on the wrong person in Joe Biden, and that they should support him because so many didn't show up last week. Who's right? Who's wrong on this?
Well, listen, when it comes to support, I think that Joe Biden needs to talk about the support that he got when he was running for election. He said that when he was in office, he was going to eradicate this type of systematic injustices that are out there. But what we've seen from Joe Biden is a man without a plan. Politics, by the very nature of its word, is negotiating, is caucusing with people to make sure that they get on your side of the fence. But we've seen none of that. And like Ameshia and Brittney were saying, there are other people, other Republicans, other Democrats, who they also need to cajole to go over to the other side. What is the strategy and who are they calling on? And if their strategy isn't working right now, go to some old school Republicans, get out of Mitt Romney, have him come back and talk to some of his people that he knows all too well. But they don't have a plan, and that is the problem. We also have two people who are holding up the filibuster, at least on record, who are not even up for, re-election again. So what do they have to use? So we have to look outside of these people who are holding it up and look at a different strategy and do the politics in its real meaning. And that is sitting down at the table, negotiating and figuring out how to convince the other side to come to your side. And that's just not happening.
But don't you need leverage, Candace? And how about negotiating by force? And by that, I mean, I'm with Martin Luther King III. It's time for some boycotts up in here, okay? There would be no federal holiday, and Arizona wouldn't be celebrating the King holiday if people didn't say, including Stevie Wonder, we're not going to put up with this anymore. So isn't it time to kind of put some muscle behind this?
Oh, absolutely. It's time to go to the extreme and ask people to do the extreme. But let's face it, we have already been doing the extreme in terms of getting voting rights and hitting boots to the ground. It is time for Joe Biden to actually match what the people are doing, to rise to his promise that he gave us a year ago, because he hasn't been able to do that. It is time to take those tactics and do more, obviously, than he has been doing.
And maybe run that other candidate from your own party against you, like they're threatening and perhaps are going to do with Sinema, in Arizona. But Brittney, I want to show this tweet and I ask you to react to it, because I'm all for public shame as well, but some people can't be shamed. I mean, here you have Derek Johnson, NAACP, trolling Sinema here, who he pulls up this old tweet where she calls John Lewis, dearly departed, my hero. Rest in power, my friend. Friend, hero, with friends like this, is this the right thing to do? And is it enough for a woman who stood before her peers and again, emphatically said, yeah, not so much?
Yeah, look, one of the things that infuriates me about this, I think Biden did the right thing by saying either you're on the side of the Confederacy, the white supremacists, the segregationists, or you're on the side of Black people. I think he drew a moral line, and I think that that's absolutely the right approach in terms of his ability to fight. But the thing that frustrates me about this is I'm tired of a democracy that relies on Black people to overperform at the voting booth. So we have to come out in historic numbers every time, that relies on inexhaustible Black energy. So now we gotta, stage a massive boycott in all of these strategic places in order to get these people to do something basic. I'm also really tired of this idea, right, that two white people can decide the fate of voting rights, right, of the weight of Black political power. And so when sometimes we have white liberal folks who really think that we're making progress on race, who really think that things are not as bad as they seem, the fact that Black people perennially find themselves in a position where two white people can literally preside over the dismantling of rights that Black people have fought for since the end of slavery, have died for in massive amounts, the levels of rage that we have. And so the other part of this is, to the extent that moral suasion or that Biden can use the bully pulpit here, I still don't think they're telling the story exactly right, that it's not fair to put the weight of democracy and power on Black people. And I think Ameshia and Candace are both absolutely right, that part of the thing that's happening here is that white liberals, white moderates, and white conservatives are coming together, just like they did at the end of Reconstruction, to say, we want to be unified, and you're an acceptable casualty of our desire to have unity with each other and our desire to govern in service of white interests. And that's the only story that we can tell about white progressives and white liberals, if they don't figure out how to get this done, that y'all too are choosing a side. Get radical if you actually on the side of Black people and make something happen. It can't continue to be up to us to work with less resources, less power, less money, less time, and try to save the world. That's completely unfair to continue to ask of us.
Sis, I'm taking in everything you're saying. I was looking down here because I had pulled up this picture yesterday, the first colored senator and representatives in the 41st and 42nd Congress of the United States. Remember, we're just talking about giving back here. What we already had, and then you have people who are preaching to us that they think they flip the script. They believe they have, I don't even know if they believe it, but this is what they're saying, the moral high ground, Ameshia, to kind of preach to us about unification and coming together and let's work on something together. And it seems like it's just a big lie. It's a lie.
It absolutely is, but the Republican Party is absolutely fine with those lies, and honestly, so are many Democrats. I think that there was just so much anger and angst after the speech that was given in Atlanta, and part of that was because racists don't like to be called racist. And many racists feel as though if they are not wearing those white sheets of the KKK and burning crosses in your yard, then they're not racist. They don't believe that the policy that they are innately creating to subjugate Black people, the same policies that they've utilized for hundreds of years, are things that are blocking you. And I think that that is a problem because you're hearing it from Democrats as well. They don't want to move up from the filibuster, and their argument is, okay, well, we don't want to do it because what happens when seats flip and when Republicans are now in charge and they decide to do it? Well, guess what, Democrats? Republicans have been using the filibuster to their advantage for decades, so nothing is going to change that. With that being said, we have to be smart and strategic. I agree with what the professor just said. At the end of the day, we have seen this story played out before, and it should not bear on the backs of Black people to carry this weight to save our democracy. We did it after January 6th. We did it post-Reconstruction. We did it during the Civil Rights Movement. The one group that continues to bring America back to the mean, to the greatness that it's supposed to be, is always those of us with the least resources and the least leadership positions. So I think that at the end of the day, this consistent fight to bring us back is really annoying because we are not the people who this should ride on our backs. This is about democracy. It's not even solely about Black people. This is about ensuring that our democracy is alive. If everyone who is an American citizen does not have the right to vote or access to the ballot, we are not a democratic government, no matter what we posit ourselves as. We cannot go across the globe and tout our Constitution and our democracy being the greatest. It's to not be true because we don't allow Black people access to that ballot.
It is that simple. It's that simple. And you better give us something exciting to head to the polls. You better give us something to think about. You got that Senate candidate down in Louisiana who's firing up a blunt, and perhaps that'll do it. I want to know what the ladies think about it when we come right back.
Black people are 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana laws than white people. States waste $3.7 billion enforcing marijuana laws every year. Most of the people police are arresting aren't dealers, but rather people with small amounts of pot, just like me. I'm Gary Chambers, and I'm running for the U.S. Senate, and I approve this message.
It's a provocative ad. Some would say it's controversial. Gary Chambers saying, you know what? This is what is real. And yes, Black people, 4 times more likely than their white counterparts to be arrested for these low-level drug offenses, marijuana. Every 37 seconds, somebody's arrested. So is Gary Chambers on to something here? Is this ad titled 37 Seconds enough to energize his base and others? Because white people smoke a lot of pot too, Candace.
You know, and that's what I was going to say. He's energizing his base and he's energizing other people's other bases too. Listen, people who are starting their day today with this show, they're also starting it with some marijuana. That's a lot of people. Here in New Jersey, they legalized marijuana. In other 18 states, they've legalized it. This is the way that we are going. And the next conversation that he's going to be getting to is, you know, now that if you're talking about legalizing marijuana, get these people from behind bars, get them off of probation, and then get them into the field legally of marijuana. That's what we're doing in New Jersey here. And that's been hard too, just the financial thrust of getting people into the legal market. So I think this is going to work, but along the way, there are going to have to be big decisions made in order to make sure that Black people get their just due, so that they're not only put behind bars, but once they get out, they can also be in effect just legally, because it's $1 billion business. Get them in it. It's been a hard process, though.
Is it enough, Brittney? Is this enough to push him, really push John Kennedy out of that Senate seat down in Louisiana?
Look, I don't know how the brother's going to fare, but as a Louisiana girl, I just left my home state yesterday. I'm here for this all of the way. Now, look,
Me
real
too.
talk, I have spent the last several weeks recovering from an edible gone wrong. So I don't know that in my current state of New Jersey, I'll be pulling up to the dispensary when it opens. I do think that as somebody who has seen her family ravaged by the prison industrial complex, particularly as it plays out in Louisiana, the ways that men in my family have engaged in what scholars call the informal economy, and have had their lives ruined by it, that this is going to be a rallying cry, that this does matter across many different vectors of power, many different communities. And I also think that Candace is absolutely right, that this only matters insofar as the brother doesn't just bring legalized marijuana to the state, and medical marijuana is legal, but then it's very hard to get it, right? But also
Mm-hmm.
that we have a conversation about, you can't keep these Black men who you locked up for decades for dealing marijuana, you can't keep them in prison. And beyond that, you can't also lock them out of the industry. So what we have to also say is, this can't be a money-making scheme for powerful white folks in this largely conservative state at the expense of Black communities. So if you're going to legalize it, you also need to wipe those slates clean for all of these folks, and you need to allow this to be a legitimate pathway back into reentry for so many brothers who have pioneered this service to our communities.
Mm-hmm.
Ameshia, I've not seen a candidate do it quite like this, okay? Sitting in that king-like chair and firing up, and those were dark papers too, the blunt there. But Gary Chambers is a real one. We last saw him talking to Connie, Miss Connie, who was shopping online at the school board meeting when he was trying to get the name of the high school changed down there because it was named after a treasonous Confederate. So do you think that more should follow his lead here when they're trying to unseat a powerful incumbent?
I think that the Democratic Party should follow his lead. When you talk about messaging that is pitch, this is something that the DNC should be patterning themselves after. Because what voters want is that people that are real. What voters want is people who have that lived experience. What voters want is to speak to them, specifically Black voters who know this story all too well. Black men have said time and time again that the Democratic Party has behind. They do not feel like their issues are being heard. And I can't think of a more prominent one than this, particularly because of the criminal justice weight that Black men carry due to the injustice of marijuana legislation. But in addition to that, the records that they still carry, the fact that many cannot hold jobs because of those records, the fact that they have spent time in prison, in many cases longer than those who've committed violent crimes. We're talking rapes and murders for small dime bags of weed, and an industry that has now turned into a multi-billion-dollar industry that, in all honesty, only white men have access to. I hail from the great state of Illinois, and yes, they have legalized it, they have flipped the script in many things, but those Black men still carry those records. Those Black men still can't get jobs. Those Black men who apply for marijuana licensing cannot open their own dispensaries. And that is, in the state of Illinois, they are a supermajority Democratic state. So we have a lot of hurdles. Illinois is a far cry from this great state. But with that being said, I think that elevating this issue is extremely important and pertinent right now, and they have the great spokesperson to do it.
Yeah, and wouldn't it be something? Wouldn't it be something if the Democratic Party said, you know what? We're going to wipe out all of that. We're going to take care of all those federal convictions, all of them. Would that be enough to energize Black people who are so disappointed? We'll get into more topics. Sharon's Table will be right back. All right, welcome back to Sharon's Table. I think the best thing to do is just put up the cover, right? This is British Vogue, and let's just dissect it if we can, ladies. And, I think it's a beautiful cover, but there's some things that we got to talk about here because this editor is coming under fire here. It's called reverse bleaching, and I really want, Brittney, can you take us through this concept and what's behind it?
I mean, one, is it beautiful? Like, part of the challenge is that when you have these mainstream white publications who are trying to deal with their own complicity in promoting a particular kind of beauty ideal, namely that light is right, that lighter skin is more beautiful, then what they're doing is trying to stand against that, trying to stand against what is still a global practice of skin bleaching and say that we support dark skin. But this is not the way that you support dark skin. You don't have to make Black women look any shade different than the skin they're in. There's an art to figuring out how to light us. There's an art to figuring out how to adorn our bodies. There's an art to putting a sister in a jewel tone against a lovely bright backdrop. These sisters, that looks like it seems like it's high fashion if you're white and European, but it really looks to me like they're, a funeral dirge, right? And so I think that we've got to have a more expansive conversation. Let me say too, for our viewers, remember, if you're of a certain age, when Essence magazine put Alec Weck on the cover of Essence 20 years ago, and that was a huge deal, right? Because we hadn't seen that level of dark skin being celebrated in mainstream US media. So we're only 2 decades into a conversation about how you support Black women in all their beauty and brilliance. And I just think that this was a misstep.
I do too, but Candace, does it have to be? Why is it so hard? Okay, why is it so hard, and why do people keep stepping in it?
Listen, it's so hard because they don't understand, and like Brittney just said, this is new to them. And in terms of lighting, that is a big issue. On one hand, you can look at it as aesthetically pleasing and a presentation of a bunch of women who are breaking into the industry. But look at the cover. On the bottom, it says, first look at the new season and the faces shaping 2022. We can't even see their faces. It's too dark. If you look at all of them individually on their Instagram pages and when they walk the runway, you can see their faces and see who they are. And we're not a monolith. Why have they put these wigs on all of them when we're all diverse? The whole thing and the whole point of the cover, content-wise, is that diversity has reached the runway, diversity has reached covers like this in British Vogue, yet you're making them all look the same. Like Brittney said, we come in different shapes and different colors. It feels like someone looked at this and said, ugh, I can't light these Black people, because Black people are hard to light.
Let me tell you something. Then they said, Andre Talley.
Yeah, and this made it all the same.
Andre Talley, rest, brother. There's more work down here to do.
Hello.
We're right back.